Alright, so you all remember how hype levels for the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie are already through the roof and literally could not be any higher? Well, this movie just surpassed its own limitations. Namco Bandai just dropped one doozy of a commercial, and it is chock full of spoilers for what is shaping up to be the greatest clash in all of Dragon Ball history. Before we get started, how about you show that subscribe button your final form and join our notification squad so you can keep up with all of the latest Dragon Ball videos from CBR. In the opening animation sequence for 2004's Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 game for PlayStation 2, a fight was hinted at that seemed like the dream matchup for fans. For the longest time, it was considered to only be something reserved for places like video games and internet fan videos, and nowhere near the actual canon. The whole gang was there, gearing up for another exciting round of insane Dragon Ball matchups that made absolutely no sense in the larger scheme of the canon. But then, about a minute into that sequence, something was depicted that changed the lives of many Dragon Ball fans and players of the game forever. Silhouetted against a blue sky, Goku and Vegeta performing the now legendary fusion dance in order to become the ultimate warrior Gogeta. Immediately, that moment was cut short by none other than the legendary Super Saiyan himself, Broly. Needless to say, our outlook on the series was altered forever at that moment. The very idea of how a cataclysmic bout between the fused warrior and the Saiyan of legend would play out was almost too much hype for anyone to handle. Well, Namco Bandai has officially blown the lid off the Dragon Ball Super Broly hype train by dropping a 30-second commercial featuring, and we're being honest here, some of the best combat animation we've seen in all of anime, period, let alone the Dragon Ball franchise. The 30-second ad explodes out of the gate with Gogeta proudly proclaiming his name, punctuated by an eagerly awaited title card. One of the very first things that comes to mind when watching this commercial is just how confident Gogeta appears throughout. He seems to be taking great pleasure in pushing Broly's rage to increasingly higher plateaus, showcasing his power and confidence. We knew when we saw Goten and Trunks in the promos for this movie that it would have to involve fusion to some degree, and it looks like we're right. Historically, Vegeta is reluctant to even lend one iota of power to Goku, and the two are rarely on the same wavelength. But apparently, Broly is a tough enough adversary to bring these two closer together, or at least close enough to save the day. Probably one of the most important details to take note of in the commercial comes around the 15-second mark, right after a brief shot of Gogeta firing off one of Vegeta's signature final flash attacks. In the shot where Gogeta strikes a confident fighting stance, we see a blast of bluish-purplish energy erupt out around him. Think about the look of that energy, and keep it in your mind. We'll talk about it more in a second. This radiant energy continues to flow around the fighter through the rest of the ad, as we see him land massive blow after massive blow on Broly. He tries to retaliate by releasing a catastrophic attack on Gogeta, but the fighter easily sidesteps it, appearing to skate along the material, which is incredibly reminiscent of something Goku did during the Tournament of Power against the fused Universe 6 fighter Kefla. And if you remember a very important detail about that particular feat, it's that Goku was beginning to tap into the Ultra Instinct technique at that point. Now, you could also say that Natoshi Shida, one of the most accomplished key animators in Dragon Ball history, just likes animating that particular kind of move, but we think there's a lot more to it than just that. We think that this commercial gives some credibility to a theory that Dragon Ball fans have been speculating about for a while now, and that's the appearance of Gogeta utilizing some form of the Ultra Instinct state against Broly in order to take him down. Whether we'll see a partially mastered state or the full-blown white-haired hype machine, it's still up in the air. Now, with all of this in mind, take a close look at that blue-purple energy radiating off of Gogeta. You can't deny that it looks awfully similar to the type of super hot energy that pours off of Goku anytime he enters the Ultra Instinct state during the Tournament of Power. All of this would make a lot of sense, considering that Goku tends to be more of the dominant force in the Gogeta pairing. But Vegeta still has a lot of influence over the discipline and fighting style. Yes, Goku did state at the end of the Dragon Ball Super series that he couldn't even remember how to tap into Ultra Instinct anymore. But it could absolutely be possible that with their combined powers, whatever dormant shreds of Goku's physical memory of tapping into that unimaginable fighting prowess might just be awakened during the fight against Broly. Considering Vegeta's disdain for fusing with his longtime rival, it would make sense that Gogeta appears very near to the end of the film, as a final trump card the heroes fall back on in order to take down the legendary brute. This would obviously mean that both fighters were already exhausted and their strength beginning to wane. It wouldn't be a new occurrence in the Dragon Ball universe for two exhausted fighters to suddenly pop apart just before almost achieving victory against an indomitable foe. For the most part, the fights end out as final 1v1 bouts with Goku facing off against the big baddie. With such immense powers at play here, the very end of the film could still be anyone's game, and we simply cannot wait a second longer for the movie to premiere. Do you think we're onto something here and we may actually get to see Gogeta tap into Ultra Instinct? Or that he'll finish the fight before unfusing? Sound off in the comment section below and click that subscribe button for even more great Dragon Ball videos from CBR. Thanks for watching.